Hey everybody, it's Cameron here, and I just wanted to do a quick video on some of the comments that I've been getting on a video that we posted from TechnoTutor with Max and I reading a first grade level book just the other day, a few days ago. I posted a video. It's about a 7-minute video, and if you want to see it, you can check it out. It's on the TechnoTutor page. It should be like the first video. I pinned it as a post. And in the video, basically, I'm opening up a first grade level book with Max. I talk to him first, and then I open up a book, and he reads quite a few pages in the book. And there's even a few there's like one word where he doesn't recognize it because it's a word that he didn't already know. He hadn't learned it in TechnoTutor. And so I left that point in there so people could see he's not just sounding the words out. And I'll explain in a moment this comment that someone left, but he's not hyperlexic, because even a simple word like what, W-H-A-T, he didn't know it. And he said, like, what's that? And I said, that word? What is that word, Max? Do you know that word? He said, I don't know it. And then I told him, and he said, oh, okay, because he just didn't know it. And so the reason I left that in there is for showing, sorry, someone's texting me, is to show you that he's integrating words with TechnoTutor, and he's able to recognize them, and that's what's going on. We're not teaching him some kind of tricks or anything. We put the words into TechnoTutor. He goes through it one time, and then he knows it, right? One time in TechnoTutor, which if you haven't seen it, you won't understand what that means one time, but you can talk to one of our distributors and get a demo, and you can see what it looks like. But I wanted to talk about some of the comments that I've gotten on that video, and you can go watch the video for yourself. I got I got a few comments from people saying that, oh, their kids read at a young age, which happens from time to time. Kids do read from a young age, but generally speaking, it's something that is very rare, and it's not the same thing as what we're doing from the perspective of either the child is memorizing the words on the page, or there's like an anomaly, like a neuro biological sort of anomaly that allows them to do that. And what they said is, generally speaking, their peers will eventually catch up. So it's just something random that happens. And the most important thing to realize about that is it's not something special that the parents are doing. They just read to their kids, and then one day they just notice that their kid can read. But it's like a very rare specific thing that occurs. It's not normal at all. And for those of you who have been following my videos with Katie and I and Max and now Seneca, we've been very open book about everything. So, I've been talking about TechnoTutor since 2013, or before really. And I mean, Max wasn't born until 2016. So do you think we just got lucky? Like, oh, we're one of those really super rare lucky people who had a kid who can read before they're age 3, and we just also happen to have this technology that teaches kids to read that we're promoting. We've been promoting it for years before we even decided to have kids. It's just a big coincidence. So like, no, it's not what's occurring. And we've shown through the videos that we've done the developmental process. Max wasn't just like we read to him a bunch and then one day suddenly he could read. We show you through the videos that we've done. It's on Education is Evolution on my personal page. Some of them are on the TechnoTutor page, but more are on the Education is Evolution page. And what we've shown through that is the process that we've gone through with Max. And we've shown you how, when he was like 16 months old, he really started to recognize the letters and the letters and how they sound and could say them. And it was through what we were doing. It wasn't just a random thing that happened, and it wasn't just he was gifted at it. He started doing it in response to us using TechnoTutor with him. And then eventually he learned all the numbers the same way, and then all the punctuation. And then once we had all of that, so anything he would encounter in a book, there wouldn't be any symbols he wouldn't not recognize. Then we started with specifically integrating whole words, small words like go and up and things like that. And then we even tried bigger words like world and word. And using TechnoTutor, he could distinguish the difference between the two. And you might say, oh, he's guessing. But the interesting thing is, if he sees a word, like let's say with a W, but it's not a word he's seen before, he'll just guess. He'll say like world. It's like whatever's closest to the thing he does recognize. And so you can see he's not sounding it out. He's either, I know what it is, or I don't know, so I'm going to guess. You can tell when he does it. Because I'll say, is that what that word is? And he'll say, no. I'll say, what is it? And he'll say, I don't know. But sometimes he'll make a guess first. So you can see the difference when he does that. And I think he actually does that in that video, if you go back and watch it, on the word what. He says another word, which is not what it says. I think he says work. And then I say, what is that word? And then he says, I'm not sure. And then I ask him again just to check so everyone can see. And I say, what is it? And he says, I don't know. And then I tell him what it is. And he says, okay. And then I ask him the next word. He recognizes it. The next one, he recognizes it. So I'm showing you, everyone, the process. And unfortunately, there are going to be skeptics. There are going to be people who just, for whatever reason, you know, they want to rain on your parade, so to speak. And they will try to poke holes in everything, and they will say, well, you're not using this, you're not doing that, or you're doing a problem here or there. But what you'll notice is those people never have an actual solution. They'll just, like, okay, let me give you some examples. So other than people saying, oh, my kid could read when they were 2, which again is most likely just memorization. Mostly, because there is such a thing as hyperlexia, where some children just are able to read at a very young age, and their parents are also reading to them and so forth. Not, it just comes out of nowhere. But that is a very atypical thing that occurs, extremely rare. And typically those children develop the ability to talk much later. Like, I think Albert Einstein was one of those people, if I'm not mistaken, where it's like they spoke late even though they read early. And so, and then people think that there's like, they're dumb or something, but they're not. It's just because they're not speaking. And that's where the word dumb actually means. It means you don't speak, right? So people like that will, in many cases, not talk till much later, even though they can actually process information and read and so forth. So, but those are like specific things that occur, and there's reasons for it. So what you're seeing with Max, though, is he's a very normal child. He's not some savant. He's not some extremely gifted child from the perspective of he's just able to learn words very easily. And, you know, really, you have to ask yourself, is it a coincidence that he's able to read right now at a first grade level and without memorizing? He's demonstrating that he's not memorized the words, because we're reading him books, first of all, he doesn't know, and that because we've never read them to him before. And you can see in the videos when he comes across a word he doesn't know. And I do that deliberately, so you can see, like, hey, here's a word he doesn't know. So it's not memorization, and he's not some kind of savant or hyperlexic or something like that. So one of the comments that I got, other than the, you know, my kid could read at an early age too, and all I did was read to him. You know, the problem with that is this. Even if TechnoTutor, let's say, oh, and let me clarify something real quick. I'm not suggesting that every parent with a 2-year-old should force their kids to read early. That's definitely not what I'm doing. And if you've followed me long enough, see, this is the problem with people jumping to conclusions based on an emotional bias. They don't actually investigate. Because if this person who was commenting had actually looked at everything I was posting for years now, they would have seen, oh, wow, you're not forcing your kid to do anything before they're ready. He's ready, right? And we explain how we know he's ready. So again, I'm not suggesting that anyone force their child ever to do anything. And I'm a very perfect example of that, because we don't ever punish Max. We never even reward him. We just explain things, and if he doesn't do it, we explain again until he understands. So there's no force required, and we don't ever force. And so I would even go as far personally to say that rewarding a child is a form of force, but parents don't want to see it that way because they think it's positive, but it's actually a form of coercive manipulation. And thanks for that comment, Eric. I appreciate that. I'll have to read the rest of it because I can only see part of it at the moment, but I appreciate that. The point about not forcing your kids to read early, I can empathize where parents are coming from for a lot of reasons. You know, you have the parents who don't want to put their kids in school because they had a bad experience and they don't think that school is a good environment for their kids. That's fine. You have the people who put their kids in school but have a different argument as to why children shouldn't read early. And that gets me into this specific comment that I got, which was this lady who claims to be a reading specialist teacher for 15 years, okay, which is the same amount of time that I've been a private academic tutor, and where I've worked with the children who the school system left behind, that they weren't addressing their needs. That's why they would come to me. So I worked with all the kids who had the problems, okay? And what she said was that the video that we uploaded was irresponsible because it was suggesting to people that they should have their kids read before they're 2, and no child should be using a reading program when they're 2 years old. I think I said before they're 2. What I meant to say was when they're 2. I don't want to misrepresent what she said, obviously, but she said, you know, no child who's 2 years old should be reading that early or using a program to read that early. And, you know, I clarified with her what we've been doing and all the research which shows, and so I'll make another video specifically on this research. I think I've talked about it somewhat before, but it's going to have to be an entire video, and I'll show you the articles, I'll show you the books. If you look at the state-of-the-art current research, like, let me think of an example. Like, I'm trying to think of an example here. Like, if you were like, okay, what's the cutting edge of neuroscience? There would be like a set of journals, you know, neuroscience journals that would be like, everyone would agree are the standard journals and textbooks and so forth. So if you were to take the standard, everyone agrees are the standard books on reading research, which is what I've done, and I've read them. There's four volumes of the Handbook of Reading Research. There's 2 volumes of the Early Literacy Research Handbook. And there's another book, for example, Beginning to Read by Marilyn Jaeger Adams. I don't know if I'm saying her middle name correctly, but it's Jaeger. And that was produced by MIT Press. And there's many other books that we have and we've read, the 30 Million Word Study, all these things by Risley and Hart, rather. There's a lot of different points. But my point is, if you take all of that and you put it all together and you actually study it, and you don't jump to conclusions, you actually look at what it says. Because I'm a skeptic myself. I did not invent TechnoTutor. This is what you have to understand. I was one of those children. Okay, actually, I don't want to get ahead of myself. When I presented all of that information to her in the comments, she said, "Don't hide your don't bury your irresponsibility underneath the word research," even though I was presenting the research. She said that if a child reads too early, okay, get this. If a child reads too early, then what'll happen is when they go to school, they'll be so far ahead of their peers, they won't be able to relate to them socially, and they will get bored because they'll be too far ahead. And she said, I've seen what this kind of obsessive academic focus can do to children in school. And I think I might make this video public, if it's not already, and post it as a comment to her video so she can see where I'm coming from. Because, look, I was one of those kids in school. I was a National Merit Scholar finalist. Just removing a text message. I was a National Merit Scholar finalist. I went to the United States Air Force Academy. To even qualify to apply to that school, you have to receive a personal interview with your congressman or your senators. Sometimes they set up panels and you interview because they only have so many recommendations they can give to each service academy. Okay, so I went to, you know, I was in the top quarter of my class at a very elite private college preparatory school. I did very well academically, and yet I was extremely bored, and I never studied, and I didn't want to be in school. I hated school. I spent most of my time just not doing my homework and like playing the violin, and I didn't even want to play this stuff they told me to play. I just wanted to play stuff that I liked, that I listened to on my own. I'm not one of those people who likes to sit in a room and have somebody lecture me on stuff I'm not interested in. So I totally empathize with the point. I'm not forcing anyone to do anything, but I will tell you that from my personal experience and all of the experience I have with all the students that I've worked with TechnoTutor would confirm this as well. However, I'm just going to talk about my personal experience. My personal experience is that once I started using TechnoTutor for myself, it did 2 things for me personally. One, I was able to now start processing the emotional problems that I had because I was, for all intents and purposes, abandoned by my mother when I was 7 years old, and then all the things that went along with that. I was able to process that stuff so that I can be a better father for my children, and a better husband, and a better business person, a better everything. And then in addition to that, it reignited my love for learning, because I went to university and studied mathematics, and I got very bored. There was 2 classes that I straight up just failed because I didn't even ever do the homework, and I waited till the day before the final to even open the book, and it was real analysis, and I was like, I can't learn this. And I was so stressed. I thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown. I just went in and turned in my test in and failed it. And then the next semester, I didn't even show up to the 2 classes that I signed up for, complex analysis and something else. I don't remember. I think it was the second semester of abstract algebra or something. Whenever a subject caught my attention and I really liked it, I liked it. I actually liked the first semester of abstract algebra, but that was pretty much it in math. And I went back to university after I started working with TechnoTutor specifically, and I was tutoring all of my tutoring clients with it because I wanted to see how would it help them. And I went back to university just to see like how would it help me in school. And guess what? I was the #1 student in every single class that I took, and I was taking stuff that I didn't know, Java. So that's object-oriented programming. I was taking multivariable calculus, analysis, probability. The probability was one of the courses that I failed previously in university. And I was the top student. I loved going to class. I loved taking tests because it was just showing what I already knew. I didn't ever have to study for tests because I would put in all my vocabulary into my TechnoTutor. I would read the book and do all the exercises, and I would freaking know it. And so class wasn't boring anymore because I knew everything. I actually understood it, and I was the one like being able to see the flaws in what was being presented by the other students, for example. I was able to ask better questions, and when I would go and consult with my teachers outside of class, we would have much more in-depth conversations and so forth. It was amazing. So I had a great experience. It opened up my love for learning. I mean, I was able to read neuroscience textbooks, for example, that I never would have thought I could read before. So I understand when we talk about what is a neuropathway, I understand the chemical nature of how neuropathways are created and long-term potentiation and all the stuff that goes into that. I understand it because I've read the same textbooks that the people who study neuroscience in school read. And that's not the only subject. In any subject I want, I can take it and I can read it and I can really learn it and I can explain it and I can use it in the context of other things and put it all together. So it just makes learning so much fun. And that's why I've been able to then take all of the reading research and put it all together and understand it and integrate it, instead of it being disjointed things where you have a specialist here and there and they all disagree. I've been able to actually see and look at it and see, oh look, this is what it's saying the problem is. The problem, just to put it simplistically, is that children can't recognize words. And they can't recognize the letters effectively. And what TechnoTutor does is starts with recognizing the letters effectively and then building to the words and so forth. So you start with the most basic building block, which is what Adams says in Beginning to Read, which is published in the 90s by MIT Press, and which is referenced in the Early Literacy Research Handbook. So I understand where this reading specialist, apparent reading specialist teacher is coming from. But what she doesn't realize is that the students that the schools couldn't help, the smart ones who were really bored, they were coming to me, and their parents were paying me hundreds of dollars an hour to help them focus and get their schoolwork done. And what I found was when I started using TechnoTutor with them, and we would just work with the vocabulary first and then explain the lesson and talk about it, it was like a totally different child, a totally different student. To where I've had students now where both of their siblings were doing really well in school and didn't see any need to do anything different. And then the younger sibling would go to school and enter private. She was going into high school, and she was immediately failing several classes, just couldn't handle it. And I find out she had been diagnosed with dyslexia and a few other things. And they had done a full neuropsychological evaluation to help understand what the issue was. And the doctors said, the PhDs said it was just anxiety. That's all it was. And I'm like, well, what's the source of the anxiety? Now, I'm not a doctor, so I can't say I can cure anxiety or dyslexia or any of that kind of stuff. I'm not claiming to. But when I looked at all the studies, all the tests that they did, I saw that her word recognition was low. So I said, well, I can help you with that, and let me show you how it works. And I showed them, and they're like, okay, this kind of makes sense. They started doing it. This is at like kind of the middle of the first semester of her first year of private school, high school. End of the year, okay, I touched base with them over the summer after that year's over, and the mom says, oh, by the way, our daughter, I won't say their name, but our daughter is, she made the dean's list last year. And she was like, it was a big difference than where we started. And then I followed up with them over the summer, or at the beginning of the school year rather, and helped the daughter make sure she could put all of her new vocabulary in for her new classes. We didn't even go over the information. I just helped her make the list to make sure she was very clear on how to do it. You know, just kind of like a getting back into the groove of school thing. And she made a 94 on her first geometry quiz. And her mom was like, and she was like, whoa, like that's not how they started the previous year. Like off to a great start. So, and that's a child who had challenges. And those things could have been prevented early on from my perspective. Now, I can't say I can prevent dyslexia and things like that, so I'm not suggesting that. But I will tell you that with my son, what I found out when we were using TechnoTutor with him, so specifically in his case, was when he would see a B or a D or a P even, he would sometimes just say B or D. He would mix them up. And I would correct it. This is when he was 16 months old, okay? So when we were doing TechnoTutor, he would say B if it was a D. And I said to him one time, when he was 16 months old, I said, because we always explaining everything. And I said to him, the B points this way, the D points this way. And he said, oh. And he never made that mistake again. And so I, from my perspective, caught something that could have been a little tiny crack in his foundation that could have created instability in the rest of his reading ability and so forth. And so my own personal theory is that some children, they get lucky, they get all the right points, generally speaking, and that's why they're able to read so early. And the problem is you have people like this woman who might be a very nice person, and I wish her no harm or anything, but she doesn't. It's like Jesus said, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. Because what she doesn't realize is, I've been to Acres Home in Houston. I've sat with the families on the concrete floor where every room in their house is concrete with bare mattresses on the floor, where we're sitting in their living room on the bare concrete, where the sofa we're sitting on is the seat that was pulled out the back of a van, and our table that we're using to discuss things is an igloo cooler. Okay, and I've sat down and tested the parents and seen that they can't read. And how do you expect a person like that to read to their children? Because it's a cycle. And the thing is, it's not just my son, right? Because another contention she had was that I'm just using research. I'm just researching on my own son and presenting that as if it's proof of something. No, that's just one fucking video, okay? I'm not gonna upload videos of other people's children, okay? That I don't have the right to do that. So I'm showing you my son. And I'm showing you the child that we are working with. That's our responsibility, okay? If you read the testimonials and you talk to all the people that have been using TechnoTutor, you would see that it's not just us. And it also leads to part of the thing, which is part of the problem, which is, sometimes people will say, well, why don't you do all this university research and stuff and prove it that way? First of all, I don't need to, because even if I gave you all the research, which I just showed this person I explained all the research that backs up what we're doing. And she was like, well, you're just trying to bury irresponsibility under research. So first of all, she didn't read it. I doubt she's read all 4,000 pages of the 4 volumes of the Handbook of Reading Research. I really doubt she's read that. I could be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong. But I doubt she's read those, and also all the early literacy research and all the other, at least 100 other books on reading and dyslexia and vocabulary and all of the other research papers and neuroscience and all the stuff that I've studied. I doubt that there's even maybe a handful of people who've read everything that I've read and who have also tested it in real time, in real life learning environments like I have, and proven to myself beyond a shadow of a doubt that this works no matter who the person is. And I've taken children where I've met with them in their home, and this girl had cerebral palsy, and like every learning disability, you name it. I mean, when she was sitting there, and I don't mean any disrespect, but she was like sitting there like this, like sitting there like that the whole time. And I'm just talking to her mom, and the mom's like working 2 jobs at Walmart, and she's like, We keep trying to get all this help from the school system, but they won't help us, and we have the reading specialists and all that. But now they're cutting funding or something, or they're making some new decision, and so they're taking her out of the special education class, and they had another name for it nowadays. It's a politically correct name. But they're taking her out of that class, and they're putting her in a regular 8th grade class with everybody else. And I mean, she was in tears. I was almost in tears. Well, I sat down with the little girl in TechnoTutor, and I had her learn 11th grade words right there in front of the mom in about 15 minutes. And the mom was like, oh my God. She was like, oh my God. And I said, look, I'm not a doctor, but as far as I can tell, there's nothing wrong with your daughter's ability to learn new words. And if we agree, which all the research says, that your vocabulary is the single best predictor of your success in life, your income, your ability to communicate, your ability to have good relationships. It's the #1 compatibility factor in marriages. I mean, you just go on and on and on and on. It's this your 4-year-old vocabulary is the best predictor of your success in 3rd grade, and your 3rd grade reading ability. And your 3rd grade reading ability is the best predictor of whether you're going to graduate high school or drop out, whether you're going to go to university, whether you're going to end up on jail or on welfare. I mean, that's not my statistics. That's like, everybody knows these statistics. And low-income families, it shows, on average, have between 0 and 2 age-appropriate books in the home. So just to go, well, my kid was reading when they were 2, it's because I read to him all the time. Well, how is a person like that going to talk to a person who's a low-income, who has no books in the home and can't even read themselves? Now imagine that you can put a child, just if you have a little patience, you can sit with the child and you can teach them, first of all, the alphabet, and then the numbers, and then all of the punctuation and math symbols and all that stuff. And then you can teach them the basic words, and then you can build from there. Because what we've found is that this helps the lower income children who are struggling. It helps the upper income children because they're all struggling too, just in it's a different expression. It's not actually a different way. And I was just reading an article today that said, don't make the mistake of thinking that literacy is just a problem of poverty. They said because they're finding that the middle and upper class, their children are struggling with reading too. Just that they have more money to put coping mechanisms. And I know because I was one of those coping mechanisms. My name is Cameron Cope. I was one of those coping mechanisms. I was that $250 an hour tutor who you sent your kid to make sure that they memorized what was on the test, and then they promptly forgot it. But that's how they got through high school, and they ended up making the B's and the A's that the poor kid would have just not had any support with. The most interesting point about all of this is just the level to which people will argue and not realize that they're arguing for limitation, and not be open to something and immediately judge, to immediately say that a video of my this is the context, a video of me asking my son Max to demonstrate his reading ability when he's almost 3. Okay, he'll be 3 in 2 months. And then to say that we've been using this program with him, and that we've been using it with other people, and they've had really good results with it, and that all the research, not just the research we've done, all of the research, all of the reading research points to the same conclusion, which is this: children who are poor readers, generally speaking, so we're saying on average, generally speaking, like 9 times out of 10, so not the one rare case where they have some sort of like brain damage or something like that, but just the general child who struggles with reading, whether they're poor or rich, the general consensus, or the consensus is that the general average child who struggles with reading, the reason why is because they cannot read words quickly, effortlessly, and automatically. And that the only way that the schools know how to intervene that isn't just throwing random things at everything, because there's all kinds of theories, and the schools just try to, like shotgun approach, try all of them. The only real way they know to really recommend how to supplement a child's vocabulary is just to have them essentially read books that have more vocabulary than the child knows. And so everything they do is just like techniques of trying to get that to happen. And even the phonics stuff, it doesn't really help, because unless you have a really good memory, you can't remember the phonics rules, and you can't remember when they don't apply. Like, try to teach the word enough, E-N-O-U-G-H, to a child through phonics. Like, Even it's just like, how are you going to do that? It doesn't work. Or the word there, T-H-E-I-R. Why is T-H-E-R-E and T-H-E-I-R and T-H-Y''R-E all sound the same, even though they have different phonetics? So in school, what they're explaining is that, or what the research is explaining rather, is that in school, the only thing they know is like when children are in school, so by the time they're 5 to 6 and beyond, they're like, well, if we can get them to read words outside their vocabulary, then that would expose them to new words. However, what the research says is the catch-22 within all of this is that this is already past the age where children are absorbing new vocabulary almost like automatically, which is generally between the 3 to 5 year range. Now, it's actually from the moment you're in the womb, right? But they can't say that. Well, they do say that, but my point is they can't address it in an early literacy book because they're only addressing children from 3 to 5, because that's what they consider early literacy. So they can't really address it if it's a child in the womb or a child who's 0 or a child who's 5 months or something. That's not considered early literacy. That's considered infancy. So by the time the child is 3 to 5, they're saying, but that is the window where if you could make a difference in the child's vocabulary, it would be in that window, because the child's ability to just learn automatically is so open. And they proved it. They showed, like, for example, when they controlled for all the variables, you know, whether it's income level, books in the home, all those things, when they controlled for all the variables, and the only thing they adjusted was whether the child's preschool teacher, so from 3 to 5, whether their preschool teacher spoke a lot to them or not and had a high vocabulary, that it accounted for 49% of the variance in the child's 3rd grade reading ability. Just that alone. So in other words, that started to give them the clue, which they did more research and showed that it's those 3 to 5 years. That's the key window. And then if you add to that the Hart and Risley 30 million word gap study, which is showing you by age 4, using the age 4 vocabulary, they can predict the child's reading success and academic success and all that stuff. It shows you that it's the early intervention that's the most important. And what we're saying with TechnoTutor is we have a way to intervene early. Can I guarantee you it'll work for every single child? No, but I can say I haven't seen it not work for a child. I haven't seen it not work for a child or a person that I've worked with. Okay? I can't guarantee anything. You can't guarantee if you're going to have another breath. Okay? But that's why we do one-on-one demonstrations with people where we explain everything and then we let you use it for a moment and test it out and actually see, does this work? And I haven't seen someone yet who it doesn't work for, because it's based on the simple premise that if you can, let's say, replicate a scenario where the person is now using their natural ability to learn rather than their mind to memorize. If you can somehow get them to stop trying to memorize and use that natural ability that they had, that they were already using pretty much primarily in the first, let's say, 0 to 7 years, okay? But really it's active up to 3 to 5 years. And then they're showing now earlier and earlier, even as it gets up to 3 years old, it's starting to shut down already. If you can teach somebody in that window or replicate that point and get the body to learn in that automatic way again, then you can now increase the person's capacity to learn new words. And this is what I've been doing for myself. My wife has done it. We've been doing it with our children. We've been doing it with many people, and everyone is seeing that, wow, this is like fundamentally changing how I process information, how I feel about learning, my ability to learn, my ability to communicate, my ability to speak, read, everything. And TechnoTutor hits all of the points, all of the, we have the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic, all of those points, which in the reading research, they say you have to address the orthographic aspect, which is the written printed form. You have to address the phonological aspect, which is the sound, right? And you have to address, well, they actually don't even mention the kinesthetic, but we all know from the other research around learning generally that kinesthetic is an aspect that's important. The kinesthetic being the actual typing, the actual physical interaction. So it's not just a passive learning, it's an actual physical interaction as well. It's addressing all the different points, putting them all together and doing it with the natural learning ability of the person that we all still have, but that we're not using anymore consciously because we're in our conscious mind now, which is just trying to memorize things. And it's like in survival mode. So by the time you're already 7, 8, 9, you're only using 0.5% of your entire ability to learn because you're only in your conscious mind. Whereas we know from all the other research you know, the neuroscience, the psychology, all that stuff that children, when they're 2 and 3 and 4 and so forth, are still in a beta wave frequency, and theta and all that. They're not in, or not, sorry, not beta. Beta is the thinking mind. They're in the other wavelengths, the alpha and the delta and so forth, right? So they're not thinking in the same sense that we are, and it's your thinking process actually causing all the problems. You're trying to memorize all this stuff instead of just being here, absorbing automatically, and then moving on and then applying it and processing it. So the thing is, this is going to be difficult for some people to accept, and the reality is those are the people who are not going to be the early adopters. Those are the people who are going to be when everybody else is doing it, whenever the research is talking about Technotutor directly. And again, this is the problem with it, is if you wait for the research, then, I mean, you're just waiting. And so if you're going to wait, that's fine, but we're moving into an age where automation is going to very quickly replace a lot of jobs. And I mean, if you're a teacher, hey, good luck with that, because what are you going to teach? You don't even know what curriculum you need to teach, because if you're just learning algebra and calculus was invented in the 1700s. So if you're not even learning multivariable calculus until you're 15, I mean, you're going to be way behind, because with artificial intelligence and automation technology, there's going to be so few jobs that the jobs that there are, it's going to be so hyper competitive. And now you have like Google and Facebook, and these companies are saying, we don't even care if you have a college degree. If you can do the stuff that we want you to do, that's good enough, if you can demonstrate it. So this whole idea, this woman was saying about, oh, well, it's going to mean your child is going to be socially awkward in school and they're going to be bored in school. Well, guess what? Now, I'm never going to directly suggest that you shouldn't have your kids in school, because that is a personal decision. Okay, I have my own opinions and perspective about it, but I can speak to what I would do with my child, and my child would not go to school, right? Obviously, we would always follow the laws and everything that are required and all of the requirements that are done. But fortunately, I live in Texas, and we don't have to put my child in school. We do have certain guidelines that we have to follow, but those will be no problem because my child can already read. He'll be doing algebra, I'm sure, by the time he's 7 or 8. We'll see. I don't know. I can't predict those things. But we will be teaching him all the things that he would normally learn in school, in addition to a lot of other things, because those are also very valuable things. It's just that if you wait until you're 18 to have covered calculus at the most, I mean, how are you learning abstract algebra? How are you learning differential geometry and differential equations and partial differential equations? And I mean, and also studying computer science and programming and artificial intelligence. You have to understand calculus, multivariable calculus, to understand how most artificial intelligence works, like back propagation and so forth. A lot of those algorithms require an advanced understanding of calculus. So how are you going to be in the 21st century if you have a 18th century education? That doesn't make any sense. Guess when the education system was designed? In the 18th and 19th fucking century. So, of course, a teacher is going to argue for, oh, you don't want kids to be too smart because they'll get bored in school. That's just because not all teachers are like this, because I know some fabulous, amazing teachers. But there are many teachers who, like, when the kid is too smart, they're like, oh, God damn it, I got one of those smart kids. Yeah, I was that kid. I was that kid who could read the book myself and understand it, and I didn't need the teacher. And I was very bored. And I'm like, I don't care about any of this stuff anyways. Who cares? I was the kid who, in my free time, was reading books about relativity theory and actually trying to understand the Lorentz equations and all of Einstein's general theory of relativity. I didn't understand most of it because I didn't have the prerequisite in math, because I had to wait until fucking 12th grade to even learn calculus. And so when my interest level was there, my education level wasn't there, and I was like, oh, that sucks. And then people would make fun of me for carrying around a book about relativity. So yeah, I definitely understand, and I can relate to that. And that's why I wish I hadn't been in school. I wish I had spent more time mastering skills that I really enjoyed, right? And what I'm saying is, no one can accuse me of just being like, oh, you just weren't good at school. I was a National Merit Scholar finalist. There's only 15,000 a year out of the 1 million+ students who take the PSAT. So I was very gifted academically from that perspective. But school had not a lot to offer me because it was so slow. Okay, so for those parents who are listening to this person, I'm going to post this video as a response to that comment. For those of you who are listening to a teacher saying, well, don't let your kid She didn't even say that children can't read when they're 2. She said they shouldn't, because they'll get bored in school. And she said you shouldn't be encouraging people to put their kids into a program that would allow them to read when they're 2, because they might get bored in school and they won't be able to make friends. Well, you know who else was bored in school and couldn't make friends? And he threatened his parents that I'm not going to go to another day, and they got him tested, and he was like in 3rd or 4th grade, and he tested at the 11th grade level, and he said, I'm not going to another fucking day of school. Just, you better move to me to somewhere that can accommodate to me. Well, you know who that was? That was Steve Jobs. Steve fucking Jobs. All right? And then his parents moved him out of that school he was in to a different school that was a little bit more accommodating. And because the only way they could do that was move into a better neighborhood. And then that was the neighborhood where all the engineers lived, the engineers for HP and IBM and all these guys. And so down the street from him and at his school was Steve Wozniak, who was the guy who actually was the engineer of the Apple computer. And Steve Jobs was the salesperson. So to sit there and say, well, you should hold kids back because, like, that is irresponsible. That is extremely irresponsible for someone to hide behind a parent's, you know, she's apparently a reading specialist, to hide behind that and say we should really just basically not give those who want to give their kids that advantage the opportunity to at least see for themselves and make that decision as parents. Instead, listen to the experts who haven't apparently read the research, which actually says what we're saying. To listen to say those things and to hide behind a title is extremely irresponsible. It's the height of irresponsibility. Because the reality is, if someone came to me and said, my child is struggling, and I know you can't cure dyslexia and those things, but if you could support my child to be able to recognize words and be able to read and do their math homework and all that stuff, you know what? I would hold their hand and I would help them do it, because that's what I do every single day. And in fact, I have to leave right now because in 10 minutes I have a meeting with one of the families that I work with to support them a little bit more. So I'm going to go do that, and hopefully this talk will sink in for some people and will inspire some people to check things out further. You know what's really cool? We don't sell TechnoTutor online. So if somebody said to me, who I didn't know, was like, hey, I want to buy TechnoTutor, just send it to me right now, just give me the order form online, I would say no. Let me find someone who's a distributor who's near you, or who would be willing to travel to you if we don't have a distributor there, and you can talk to them and they can show it to you. They need to go through everything and explain it and educate you as to how it works and why it works. So that way you can see why, and you have to understand what it is you're getting into. Because if you're like, I just want to like something, I look at it one time and then I know everything. Or it's like, I just like a magic pill and I take it and I'm just suddenly smart. That's not how this works. It's a process. It takes, in the system, it takes 12 years to educate a kid. So if you're expecting it to take one day, that's not going to happen. So no one is being pressured into anything. No, we're not suggesting anyone force their child to do anything when they're not ready. But you can't really you can't really say that suggesting that people who want their children to have an advantage in school is irresponsible, or you want them to be able to read as early as possible without any force or without any coercion or without doing anything that would harm the child. I haven't found any children that because they read early they were harmed. That's kind of like a ridiculous statement. And before you cast judgment or anything like that, you should actually check out what we're doing and learn and just find out for yourself and see it in real time. And I'm pretty sure the person that was commenting was from British Columbia. So I don't want to obviously say their name or anything. I'm not trying to do any of that. But if you do watch this, the person I'm referring to, and that's correct. If it's not, then tell me where you're at. Or, you feel free to anyways. Send us a message on our Facebook or on our Facebook page, or go to our website and fill out the contact info, techno-tutor.com, techno-tutor, tutor.com. And we can have somebody meet up with you and show you actually what we do if you're interested. If not, that's fine. But I really am grateful for the opportunity to be able to clarify some things, because I know that we're going to get resistance. We got resistance from day one. From day one, we got resistance from people saying all kinds of nasty things about us. But it's funny because none of those people are willing to dedicate their lives their entire life and their livelihood to supporting children, to supporting families, to develop more communication and to develop their reading and learning abilities. Because I've sat with people for hours at a time, days upon days and weeks and so forth, where I've built relationships over 6-7 years with people, supporting them through these points. And I already spent 15 years in the schools, you know, in tutoring and the academic world and all that stuff. So I really know what I'm talking about from that perspective. Okay, that being said, thanks for watching. And for anybody who wants to ask me any questions, you can always just send me a message. A lot of times commenting isn't the best way, just because, you know, the nature of the way things are online. So if you want to comment, that's fine. I'd appreciate it. If you would like to share this video, I'd appreciate that too. Give it a like or a love or whatever, if you want to laugh, whatever it is. And if you want to know anything more or talk to me personally one-on-one or whatever, just send me a message. I'd be happy to chat more. All right, take care, everybody. See you next time.